Okay, so I have continued to knit and now I am ready to bind off. So before we do that, I'm just going to show you. So to make it a square, I measured, and this one was actually coming out like more 6 1/4 inch across. It's close to 6 1/2, but since I want it to be square, I just also measured enough rows so that it was 6 1/4 to match. You can see it's actually just barely, I'm gonna move my hand out of the way, just like barely under 6 1/4. 6 1/4 comes to kind of where the top of the needle is. And you don't have to be super picky with this project, but I'm just pointing that out so that you can also just be aware that when you bind it off, that's going to add the length of another row pretty much. So to bind off, we're going to start by knitting 2 stitches, just the same as we've done before. So we're going to knit the first stitch, and then this, sorry, let me move the yarn out of the way so it's easier to see. Okay, so I have 1 stitch, and here I'm going to knit the second stitch. Okay, so I now have these two stitches on my right needle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the needle in my left hand to, I'm going in through that stitch, through the first stitch, sorry. And I'm going to lift the first stitch over the second one. That was a little bit sloppy. Okay, I did it successfully, but I'm going to try and show you again, because that's what we're going to do down the length of this entire row. So I'm going to go through the first stitch and knit it, and then I have my needle through here, and I'm going to pull this stitch over this stitch. And again, I'm going to link to some videos that will show this better. So I'm doing that, and then I'm pulling it off. So again, I only have 1 stitch on here, and you can see that first stitch that I let fall is now sitting right here. So I'm just going to keep on doing that all the way down the line. I'm knitting, and then I'm pulling the previous stitch over the one that I just knit and letting it fall, so that I'm getting this nice little row of finished bound off stitches on the edge here. All right, so I'm going to keep doing this, binding off, until I get to the last stitch, and then I'll show you what we do with the last stitch. Okay, I'm not quite to the end of my bind off yet, but I'm close, and I'm coming back on now to show you, because I made a mistake, and it's helpful sometimes to know how to fix those mistakes. So my mistake is, as I was trying to pull 1 stitch through the other, I caught some of the strands of this 1 stitch, but not all of them. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to carefully put my needle through it so that I have all of the strands on that yarn, of the yarn on the needle, before pulling it off. Let's see if it happens again so I can show you what I mean. Sometimes that happens, especially with yarn like this, that the strands can separate so easily. There we go, there's a good one. These needles are also a little bit pointier than some that I'm used to using. But I will say, for just some needles that I was able to go in and pick up at the local craft store, I think they've been really good little needles. And it's always nice to have tools and materials to practice on that are not super expensive and that are really easily accessible to most people. Okay, so I'm down to my last, I have 1 stitch here and 2 stitches here, so I'm gonna just bind this next one off like usual. And then I have 1 stitch on each here. You can see I'm gonna bind this one off, same as before. So now I have no stitches on this left needle, but I'm still gonna use it to pick up that stitch and pull it over. All right, and now I just have this 1 stitch left. I'm gonna set down the needle, the extra needle. I don't need that now. I just have this 1 stitch left, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my scissors. You wanna leave, it differs from person to person and it depends on the yarn and the project, but generally I'd say you want like 8 to 10 inches to be comfortable. You can weave it in with less, but let's keep things easy on ourselves. Okay, so I snip my yarn. I have it through here. I'm just gonna gently pull up. And now I've pulled it through. It's not gonna come apart. And next I'm gonna show you how to weave in the ends. But first let's just look at it for a minute here. Move my scissors and my knitting needles. So we now have this whole piece of cloth that we've knitted. So it looks like on both sides. And it's awesome, except it's not so fun to have these little ends left. So now I'm gonna show you how to weave in those ends so that it's just a nice solid piece.